I'm going to start off by sharing something that's to build on one of the videos I think I talked about technology and how some things fade through time, almost because of lack of focus, maybe, or the population is just changing so much that we kind of lose track of the importance of a topic or a subject of study, and then we wonder when it's going to revisit again. So we know that in some populations in Europe, the population of like the birth population or the rate of birth within a population is very, very low. So you find that as time kind of moves on, the population tends to be very much older than the younger population. So it's almost like, oh my gosh, is this population just going to die off? So studying, I think probably I'm going to say around the senior age. So let's say from 65 and above it's a field of study called gerontology. And when I was at the University of Guelph, that was actually a field of study within family and human development. Like it's kind of a department within applied science at Guelph. And I had a friend who was studying that, actually, two girls that I had met that were studying that. But halfway through their program, one of them, because she was studying part time, she took actually 7 years to finish her degree. And so halfway through studying, because she was studying part time, they actually changed that field, that degree, and they changed it to something with regards to family studies. So they might have just made it broader, or I don't know how they changed the course load to actually finish the degree and graduate. So it kind of, at the time, I was just like, oh, like I wonder what's happening like within a certain country that they decided maybe we just don't need people to be graduating from this program because they can't find jobs. So it's thinking like it's almost like thinking, are we just like a younger population now where people who reach a certain age they decide to move to a different country, or like I wonder what happened. So it just started to get me thinking about retirement homes. Like we don't really hear a lot about, within some cultures we don't really hear about them having retirement homes because people assume that um, families will continue to take care of their elderly parents until they pass away, and then that's it. Like they don't need to kind of have them move on to living spaces that are meant for elderly people who might need extra supports with like medication or with how to kind of move on to a comfortable living space so it's easy for them to move around, and they have like other adults that they can kind of keep themselves entertained and kind of social with. So it's not something that's practiced in a lot of cultures. Here in North America, it's very common. So it's not something maybe that within some cultures that maybe in the Middle East or in Asia that's um, incorporated yet. So another field of study that is kind of dwindling is women's studies, which is almost to say, like, what is it that we're trying to understand about women? And I wonder what that subject matter would include. So if you have a whole degree and it's called women's studies, what does it involve? So some people might say, I mean, that's curious because you think like women who choose to stay home, for example, and raise their kids, like what is it that they can know about who they are and what they should probably learn to do so that when their kids are all grown up, they want to kind of go back into society and find a job without it being really difficult. And then you think, I wonder what different dynamics exist between different families anyway. And like, how does that change with time and with different people meeting different people from different cultures and what the expectations are? So I'm going to look at this from a perspective of somebody from a tradition where family is very, very important. I mean, it is everywhere, but in some families and some cultures, there's this interdependence where um, it's very difficult for a person to make a decision by themselves without wondering like how's this going to affect like all these other people in my family. So it becomes almost it's hard to become somebody who is not trying to enable codependency where someone can just decide I'm just going to be lazy because I know this person is going to take care of whatever it is I'm struggling with, right? It's not really fair for anybody to kind of behave that way. So um, from a culture where sometimes um, understanding how to take care of parents is very important because we're told that the reason we have to esteem our parents or like kind of have a certain kind of respect for them is because they spent so much time and effort taking care of us as young kids, even though it might have been really, really hard for them. So because they put all that effort in taking care of us, we should, as we're getting older, also make sure that they're comfortable and they're taken care of or like not neglected in any way so that we're kind of almost saying like thank you for taking care of us and raising us to be healthy adults, and we also want to kind of reciprocate that as you kind of get into your older age and maybe your body gets weaker or something like that. So think of a family now who maybe they're a young family. So let's think of like a mom and a dad who have 4 kids or 5 kids, but they actually had their kids later in life. So let's say that you have a family that was a young family, so they got married when they were 20 or something. Then you have another family who maybe got married when they were 40, right? So the grandparents in this family and the grandparents from this family are going to be very different ages. Like these grandparents might be really, really old, like in their 90s, and these grandparents might be maybe in their 40s. Like they might be still pretty young. They might still have their jobs. They might not even have any problems with like any kind of medication or any extra care that they might need. So in that case, you might think, well, is it really difficult for these parents to actually take care of their kids and the grandparents? And what are they supposed to do? And this is a very important question to ask because sometimes if you think about it, if a mom and dad are working, they're both working, and the kids are at school, and then the kids come back from school and they have to kind of do their homework with their kids. And then the parents, the older parents, the grandparents are thinking, you know what, I'm not able to move. I need to go to the doctor. I need help moving because, for some reason my body's really tired and I need somebody to help me and maybe cook with me or something like that. Then it becomes very difficult. And then the couple themselves, maybe they don't have time to spend together. And they're just like, everybody's just doing things for everybody else, and then everybody decides at the end of the day they're like, oh, thank God we got to the day, and then they get to sleep and they get to do it all over again the next day. And then somehow we don't know where the love went. It almost becomes a chore. Like everybody has to kind of get through the day and they're not really thinking about like we never get to spend time together. Like we don't get to do any fun things entertainment wise. Everybody's depending on the kind of job they have, maybe they don't even get to see each other. Like the mom goes to work during the day and then the dad stays home. And then when she comes home from work, he goes to work overnight and they hardly see each other. And then they feel like maybe they feel lonely because they don't have that love anymore. They can't find it with each other. So then they decide maybe we have to get a divorce and they find someone else to love. It's really, really stressful and it's very difficult to maintain that relationship. So you'll find now after like maybe because of COVID, who knows? But recently, just being on the internet, I've noticed that a lot of people have changed the way they want to work. So instead of having those jobs that take up all your day, they found ways of making money online. So they have these online businesses where they work for a little bit of the day, and then the rest of the time they have building relationships with their family, spending time outside, learning about all the things that they enjoy doing with their kids, and almost inviting their kids on to whatever it is that they're creating as a business. So then it becomes we're building a healthy relationship with each other. We're also understanding, do we want to have a family or not, and what kind of family do we want to have? And with this, you kind of understand, well, what is it that can create problems within a family? And one of the things that came to mind just from the last video that I created is sometimes men are almost given the responsibility of you have to learn how to collaborate with your wife, but also with your parents. For a woman, it might be a little bit different, but for a man, it tends to be very, very difficult where his parents are almost like the expectation is you have to do this, this, and this, and this, especially if it's within religion. And then the wife might think, yeah, but you know what? Our kids are asking for this. And it's a little bit different from the way we were growing up, raised and growing up. And maybe what, the tradition used to expect of us, but we're thinking about it in a little bit of a different way because our kids are asking us these questions and we have to figure them out with them in spite of what maybe our grandparents or our parents are asking or expecting of us. So then it kind of puts these parents, sometimes the mom or the dad or like the man or the woman, in this kind of pickle where they almost have no way of making anybody happy. Like they're like, I have to listen to myself and find a way to align with the universe, but then I have this pressure from this person telling me, no, we have to do it this way. And then my kids are saying, no, 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 we want to do it this way. And then you have your parents somewhere over there saying, it doesn't even matter. We need to go to the doctor because, we're struggling with this health problem. And life just becomes really difficult that you're just like, I completely lost myself. Like, I don't even know what my goals are anymore. I don't know. My challenge is my family. Like, I don't know what to do. And then it becomes, we do need to have that field of study that's going to help us understand what are the different cultures and what are the expectations we should have and what should we kind of like step back for a little bit and say, okay, well, as adults, why are retirement homes like not an option for some people? Like it's just almost like a way of saying you're going to live in a recreation center and your family will come visit you, right? I don't know what that I would feel like that I would feel about that as an adult who's growing up, because maybe I'm a person who's introverted already, so I'd be like, I'm okay with that. But some families who are um, used to a culture of like family being around all the time and they want to have that feeling of grandkids everywhere and cousins and aunts and uncles, they might feel like, oh, my kids don't love me or they're abandoning me. But you, it's, I don't know, it's a way of thinking about how to cooperate, because if you put yourself in your kids' shoes as parents now and you think, I want my kids to be happy and I want to be happy, but maybe I look like I'm giving them too much responsibility or there's too much pressure on them and I have too many expectations that are not really realistic. And how do I solve that with them? Right? Because if you don't think that way, then your kids might decide, you know what, being a parent is a very difficult job and I might have to just decide that I can't talk with you as grandparents as much anymore because your expectations are very difficult for me to meet, and I'm having a hard time building a healthy relationship with my kids, right? So in that case, it's almost like it would be really difficult for that dad or for that mom to have to choose, because they love everybody and they want to maintain that healthy relationship with everyone, because kids love their grandparents and grandparents love the kids, and then they also love their parents and they love themselves and they love their friends, and it's like all this love and I don't know what to pick, and should I pick? So trying to find that family time where you can kind of create similar habits and hobbies, and then decide, well, where do we find time to kind of build these relationships? And that can go back to school, because sometimes when we think, if we come back from school and then we have these extracurricular activities or we have homework to do, and then we don't even get to talk about, is it normal to have such a busy schedule that we don't actually have time to kind of just breathe and just wonder, like, are we taking life too fast, like without calming down a little bit to think about what is a priority, and do we have to kind of like almost skip a generation where we think, how do we create independent kids and independent grandparents, as it were, so that that middle sandwich generation doesn't get kind of lost in that 30-year gap between being like early parents and then almost established in life and ready to retire, but almost missed out on that whole period of their kids growing up. So I don't really know what different expectations are within traditions and how that changes over time, especially with people coming to countries, especially like North America, all the time from their own country and deciding, we love this because we wanted to study here and we want to build families here, but then our expectations are like what they were back home, and we don't even know what back home is anymore and what the expectations are, and if they'll allow us to change. Because sometimes people, when they grow up in a tradition, they don't understand that they're allowed to change their mind about things, but they don't realize that the way they're thinking is almost like, it's not right or wrong, but they're they don't know that, why don't we try something different and see what happens? So I made this a kind of like a short video because those two subjects are, I mean, those two fields of study are maybe some of the things that show what the population is. So if I know that I live in a city that's brand new, let's think of a city that's like 30 minutes from here, and it's kind of like it has a very small population. It might not need um, to kind of consider building a retirement home in that area, because they're just like, it's going to be a long time before people grow up to become seniors and need a retirement home in that kind of area or that geography. But if you go to other cities where uh, there's a population has been there for a very long time and the people are kind of getting older and they're not really used to thinking that, well, when I'm older, I might actually need to go to a retirement home, because it's, in their mind, they're thinking, maybe I will just spend all my older years with my kids and their kids, and I won't think about, I mean, is it going to be hurtful for me if I have to think about going to a retirement home, and why, and why not? So it's a very, very touchy subject, because like for me, I know my dad passed away, but my mom still lives, like I still live with my mom, and I think, I don't know how to feel about that. Like, it's not to say that like I'm sick of my mom or she's sick of me and we have to kind of move on, but it's almost like it's not really something we talk about, and we don't know how to talk about, like, what would make you comfortable and what would make you feel like loved, but still kind of appreciate the fact that you have a social life that you could still continue. So it's almost like saying, um, we have in a lot of these communities, like in Toronto, if you think of these really big cities, you'll have mosques or like places of worship that are, they tend to have some kind of culture. So sometimes you go to Mississauga and there's a mosque and it has a very predominant Turkey population of people from Turkey. Another one might be people from Bosnia. Another might be people from India or South Asia. Another might be people from Egypt. And it's just a way of almost kind of making people feel like, oh, this is part of like back home. We remember, some of the habits and some of the topics and some of the cultures and the norms that we used to, remember. Now, this is cool for people who just came back from, or who just arrived to Canada, for example, from back home. And maybe they've lived here for 20 years and they want to remember that. But their kids are going to feel like, it doesn't really matter. Like wherever we go, we go. Like we feel Canadian more than we feel like maybe some affinity to where back home is. So they keep these mosques in place because people are always coming from abroad, from like all these different countries, and they almost want that still that feeling of closeness to their home country. So they still like that. Oh, we have people who speak our language, and it helps them almost feel that kind of segue, so they don't feel like homesick, and they get comfortable living here. And then eventually their kids are like, whatever, and then they're fine being Canadian, and it's not really a big deal. So it's almost like you almost need that middle space. So I'm almost wondering if like retirement homes could be like that. If you kind of have retirement homes that are kind of geared to, I mean, would it be helpful if we had retirement homes around a certain culture? That way, you know, grandparents are like, our kids just abandoned us. They just like threw us in these homes and they forgot about us. It's like, no, it's not really coming from that place. It's almost like we want you to continue a social life because it's very healthy to almost offset Alzheimer's too. So your brain stays fresh and your body stays healthy, and they kind of give you like exercises. Like there's so many cute movies that show um, adults when they get into their senior years and they get involved in all these really fun activities that are, they just get to be silly and they get to be like kids again, and they don't have the responsibility of, should I be worrying about my kids and my grandkids and how they're, how they understand what the world's doing. It's like, let them be their kid, let them have their lives. It's okay. You worry about your life. Like enjoy your senior life, enjoy finding out what your body can still do, because oftentimes we don't realize that people age really well right now. Like you can see people who are in their 90s, but you look at them and you're like, I could guess that you're 60 years old because you look like you've been taking care of yourself. So I don't know, it's just something to kind of take advantage of all the benefits we've had with the progress that civilization has allowed us.